For this research project, I chose to study Bill Viola. He's a 70-year-old artist from Queens, New York. And throughout the slideshow, I picked out a couple of my favorite pieces of his. This first one is called The Raft. Viola's intent with this piece was to show a bunch of different people from various economic situations. They're all dressed, some are dressed very finely, some are dressed not so much. But this piece just shows their reaction when they're all sprayed with this deluge of water. And I just think it's really interesting to watch how, they all kind of fall into each other. Some of them kind of cower behind each other. They're all trying to stay dry and not get wet from all of this water. And they're all just grabbing onto each other and falling down. And you can see, the look of surprise and on their faces, and as they're hit with this cold water. And I just think it's really interesting how Viola shows this, these people uniting in this common experience, these different people uniting in this shocking situation. This next piece is entitled Martyrs. It's reinforcing faith through pain. A lot of Viola liked to focus on the human experience and human consciousness and just the emotion of, seeing people suffering, especially for something that they believe. And he has 4 different subjects, all subjected to the different elements of water, air, fire, and earth, which I just think is very fascinating. Viola liked to study Buddhism, and Zen and Christian mysticism, and I think it's really interesting how he applied it to these kinds of pieces, and he just wanted to show his viewers this intense fear and pain through his piece, The Martyrs. This next one is called Ascension, and what really struck out to me about this piece was actually not necessarily the piece itself, but what Viola had to say about it. And when he was asked about this piece, he said, "Why do we believe heaven is above and hell below?" And I just thought that was very striking. It was something that I had never considered before. And upon thinking about that question, I kind of realized that, the idea that heaven is above and hell is below is something that is just assumed by so many religions and cultures, but it's never actually taught as a foundation principle. And this piece just really, stuck out to me because first the subject is going down. He's falling down into the water, but then, as the video continues, he's slowly rising up, and we're left to wonder, was he almost condemned to hell and now he's rising to heaven? Or was he so close to getting to go to heaven, but now, he's rising into hell? This next piece is actually my most favorite. It's called 3 Women. And to me, this piece, I see the little girl comes out of the water. It's like she's born, and she's got these 3 stages of life: her childhood, her maidenhood, and and then her elderhood. And it's just her interacting with herself and exploring, and you can see the look of wonder, and they're just observing their surroundings and learning. And as the video continues, the oldest woman kind of disappears into the back, and she disappears into the darkness, and I think that represents death. And a lot of Viola's pieces really fixated on the concepts of birth, life, and death, and I think this one just really depicts that the most. And I just think it's very graceful, very beautiful, showing just the stages of life. And it just ends with this little girl, and she's on her own and looking off towards the camera. And I just think, this piece is very powerful and very clearly shows what Viola tries to achieve in his pieces. This next one is called Tristan's Ascension. It very clearly is trying to represent the ascension of the soul after death, and you just see the water is rising, and you see the subject down at the bottom of the water, and he slowly sits up, and he begins to rise. And I think this piece is very fascinating, just in that Viola is trying to convey, what he believes the experience of dying must be like. And I just think it's so graceful and fascinating how the subject just floats up. And when you watch this piece, the composition is constantly changing as the person starts to go up higher and higher, and there's a lot of direction and movement in this piece from the water flowing upwards, and I just think it's a very graceful piece. This next one is a close second to being my absolute favorite. At first, it's titled The Quintet of the Astonished, and I just think it's really funny. At first, when I saw it, I thought it was a little weird, but as I watched it, it grew on me, and I was just fascinated, with the story behind it, how it's not really a complete story, and it just leaves you with more questions than answers, because you see these five people all with this look of shock and horror on their faces, but you're left to wonder, what are they looking at, what are they shocked by. Each one, they're all experiencing this surprise, but there's that guy in the middle who looks almost ecstatic, and then just to the right of him, he looks, tragic. He looks absolutely devastated, and it just is very interesting how all five of these people can be experiencing the same emotion, but it's portrayed differently. I just thought that was a very fascinating part of his piece. This next one is called Fire Woman. The piece is about finding spiritual meaning in birth and life and death. And I find this piece to be very interesting because Viola is very talented with using light and color and silhouette in his pieces. And this one, you just see this woman and she throws her arms out. She just falls into this water, and it feels very cultish to me, actually. But I think it's really fascinating, just the way that he symbolized this woman dying. She falls into the flames, but really she's falling into this water, and you're left to wonder, how did she get there? Where is she going? What's going on? And I just think that really highlights Viola's intentions as an artist, to get his viewers thinking about birth, life, and death. This next piece is called The Crossing. I think it's very fascinating, just in how it is a contemplation of mystical and universal truths in religion and philosophy. That's how Viola put it. And on the left, you see this man being engulfed in flames, and on the right, he's you know being covered in this water. The water is coming down from upon him, and it starts very small. But as time goes on, it starts to overwhelm him, and they're both very different moods emotionally. The left one feels so much more dangerous, and the right one feels almost freeing, I think, just in letting oneself be overtaken by trial and tribulation. And that's just what I get out of this piece myself. But I love how the man with the water, it just starts as this drip, but then all of a sudden the water just comes crashing down on him, and he hardly even flinches. And I really think this highlights how Viola likes to get his viewers thinking about the meaning with philosophy, and he likes, there's no exact meaning to any of his pieces. It's really left up to the viewer, which I really appreciate about his pieces. So this one is actually probably like my third favorite. I really appreciate just the freeing feeling of this piece, of how, you know, this man just absolutely submits himself to the fire and to the water, until in the very end he just disappears. This next piece is called The Dreamers. I actually saw this one coming up a lot when I was looking into Viola and his work. It just shows a bunch of different people, men, women, and even a child, and they're just floating in the water, and it's very serene and very surreal. And this video actually has sound to it. You can just hear the water bubbling. It's muted right now in the presentation, but if you see the video online, there's this very serene sound, and it reminds me of, being in the bathtub when you lay down and your ears are in the water and everything is quiet, and it's warm and you just float there. And when you are dreaming, it's this you're not very grounded. You feel very light and it's warm. And I just like how Viola tries to visualize a feeling in this way and visualize dreaming. And I think he did a very good job of that in this piece. This next one is called Emergence. And as I said before, Viola was very fascinated with different religions, specifically Zen Buddhism and Islamic religions and Christian mysticism. And he was fascinated with the idea of Christ's resurrection because he was so intrigued by life, birth, and death, and then the fact that Christ died and was resurrected was something that he wanted to comment on in this piece. And you just see the man rising from the sarcophagus representing Jesus Christ, and the women around him just watching on in awe as he rises out of the tomb, and the water's flowing down from below, making this almost like majestic, magical scene as he comes out from the grave. And I just think it's a very clear representation of Viola and his goals and what his work is all about as a whole. And I just thought this piece was very impressive. It wasn't my favorite compositionally, but message-wise, I think was very interesting. And in all, I just really learned a lot, but from Bill Viola, just in his use of composition and color and subject matter, even was a lot of these messages that he used were very profound, and it inspires me to create these more profound messages in my own artwork and to leave stories unfinished and let the viewer decide for themselves what is going on. I just really admire how dramatic all of these pieces are. When I was researching all of the different artists, when I saw Viola's artwork just on a Google search, I was blown away by how dramatic and ethereal and almost haunting these pictures are, and all of these videos. And it was something that I really was looking forward to researching, and I'm very glad that I chose Viola as my subject of study.